The human ship drifted silently through the dark void near the edges of the alien empire. Its hull was scorched in places, panels missing, and the engines barely functional. Inside, Ryan lay slumped against the wall of the cockpit. His armor was cracked, his uniform torn, and his body a map of scars, some old, some fresh. He had survived battles that would have killed most humans, yet he was still alive, breathing, and thinking. Somehow, against all odds, he had reached this place. Ryan's eyes flickered open, adjusting to dim light. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his side. He had learned long ago not to complain, not to let his pain show. He moved slowly, testing his strength, and realized he had been moved. The cold, sterile smell of a healing chamber filled his senses. Strange devices hummed softly, scanning his body. A soft voice echoed through the room, making him look up. A figure entered, tall, elegant, and unlike anything he had ever seen. The alien queen. She moved with a grace that seemed almost unreal, her skin shimmering slightly under the lights, her eyes larger than humans, but filled with an intelligence and curiosity that made Ryan hold his breath. She studied him as if she could see through the layers of his armor, through the scars on his skin, and even into his thoughts. "You survived," she said, her voice calm but carrying a weight of authority. "Many would not." Ryan straightened as best he could, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "I fight," he said simply, his voice rough from dehydration and exhaustion. "I survive." The queen moved closer, her eyes tracing the lines of his scars. Each mark told a story, though she did not yet know the story. Some were old, jagged lines across his arms. Others were burns from plasma weapons, deep and raw. She felt a strange sense of respect. Most humans, she had heard, were reckless, brash, and violent. Yet this human seemed different. He was calm, quiet, yet his presence radiated strength. "Who did you fight for?" she asked, tilting her head. Her voice was soft now, curious rather than commanding. Ryan's gaze dropped to his hands. He thought of old wars, old friends, and a face he had lost long ago. He stayed silent, knowing the queen would wait. Finally he said, "For someone." The queen studied him more closely. "Someone important?" she asked. "Yes," he whispered almost to himself. Then he looked up, meeting her eyes. "For you," he said quietly, though he was not sure if he meant her personally or the people she protected. Elira froze for a moment. No human had ever spoken like that to her before. Most only wanted to survive, to conquer, or to bargain. This one, he fought for someone else. And somehow, even though she had never met him, he had risked everything for her people. The thought made something stir inside her, something unfamiliar but not unwelcome. She signaled to her guards to leave them alone, and they stepped back silently. She circled him slowly, inspecting the wounds that told stories of battles fought in distant stars. She touched one scar lightly, careful not to hurt him. "You carry many marks," she said. "Each one could have ended your life." Ryan flinched slightly at her touch, though he did not pull away. "I survived," he repeated. "I had to." "Had to?" she echoed, her voice soft, almost like a question to herself. "Most humans fight for glory, or for orders, or for money. You do not. You fight for others." He looked at her steadily. "Because someone needs me," he said. His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made her pause. She had never encountered such honesty in anyone, human or alien. The room was quiet for a long time, broken only by the faint hum of the healing devices. Elira had seen countless warriors, soldiers trained for war and survival, but this human, there was something different. He had scars not just on his body but on his spirit, and yet he had survived. And now, Here he was, standing, or trying to stand, in her chamber, offering his strength without demand, without pride, and without fear. "Your ship," she said finally, breaking the silence. "It carried a message, not a weapon." "Why?" Ryan's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles. "Because someone told me it was the right thing to do, and because someone has to act before it's too late." Elira felt a strange pull in her chest. Humans were unpredictable, yes, and she had heard tales of their recklessness. But this human, he carried a calm certainty, a willingness to risk everything to save lives, even alien lives. Her counsel would have dismissed him immediately, yet she found herself intrigued, drawn to him in ways she could not yet name. She asked him to explain the enemy he had encountered, a force rising in deep space, one that threatened both their species. He spoke plainly, without exaggeration, describing tactics, movements, and vulnerabilities. His knowledge was practical, precise, and yet tinged with a humanity she had never understood. Humans fought differently. They risked their bodies and lives not for conquest, but for those they cared about. Elira realized she had underestimated them. When he finished, she studied him silently. "You came here alone," she said. "No backup, no army?" Ryan shook his head. "Alone. I could not wait. Someone had to act." She noticed a faint tremor in his hands, a sign of exhaustion. Yet there was also strength in his posture, a refusal to collapse entirely. Elira felt a rush of admiration. Few humans, she realized, could endure what he had endured and still hold their heads high. She wanted to know more, to understand the man who carried such scars and still fought for life rather than destruction. She walked closer and touched the faint lines on his arm again, her fingers brushing lightly against old burns and cuts. "These wounds," she whispered. "You must have suffered greatly." Ryan's eyes met hers. "Pain teaches," he said softly. "It teaches you what matters." Her heart skipped, an emotion unfamiliar and slightly dangerous. She had not felt such a pull in years. She had ruled with logic, strategy, and strength, keeping distance from any attachments that could weaken her rule. Yet now, she could not look away from him. She wanted to understand him, to know why he risked so much for strangers. The chamber doors opened suddenly and a message arrived from her council. Scanners had detected the enemy near her borders. Panic surged among her advisors. Many demanded Ryan be sent back immediately. He was only one human, they said. He could not possibly protect her world. But Elira refused. She studied him for a long moment, taking in the way he moved, the calm in his eyes, the scars that told of countless battles survived. She believed his arrival was no accident. Somehow this human was meant to be here. She would not let him leave. Not yet. That night, she returned to the chamber quietly, finding him standing by a large window that overlooked her star system. He gazed at the swirling planets and the distant suns with quiet admiration. He looked at peace for the first time since she had met him. "You do not rest," she said softly. "I have been through worse," he replied. "The stars, they help me think." Her eyes traced the lines of his body again, the scars that spoke of battles, loss, and survival. She stepped closer, though not too close. "Who did you fight for?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ryan hesitated. He could feel her curiosity, her respect, her attention. Finally, he said, "Someone I lost a long time ago." The Queen felt a sudden pang in her chest, a strange empathy for a human she barely knew. She was about to step back when he added quietly, almost too soft for her to hear, "And today, I fought for your people too." Elira froze. She had never heard a human speak so honestly, so completely selfless. Her heart pounded. This soldier, This scarred man who had come alone across the void of space had risked everything not for glory, not for conquest, but because he cared, because he believed life was worth protecting. She left the chamber that night with her thoughts in turmoil. She had expected a human to be unpredictable, reckless, or selfish. Yet here he was, a man who had suffered, survived, and still acted for others. The Queen realized she had underestimated humans, and she understood deep in her chest that something had changed, something new and powerful had begun. Ryan remained by the window a little longer, staring at the stars. He felt exhaustion pressing on him, but also a strange calm. He had done what he had come to do. He had reached the Queen, spoken truth, and survived. Somehow he had already begun to make a difference, and somewhere in the palace, the alien Queen was thinking of the scars on his body, the bravery in his eyes, and the promise of a human who would fight for life itself. The universe outside was quiet, but inside, something had shifted. A human soldier had arrived, scarred but unbroken, and his presence had already begun to change the course of history. The next morning, Ryan woke to the soft light of the alien palace. He felt the ache of old and new wounds, but his spirit remained firm. The Queen, Elira, had insisted that he remain under her protection, and while he was thankful, he could feel the tension in the palace walls. Her guards watched him carefully, some with curiosity, some with mistrust. Yet the Queen herself moved among them, silent and commanding, yet glancing at him every now and then with an unreadable expression. Ryan was given freedom to walk through the palace. He moved slowly, careful not to stumble, but everywhere he went, he saw evidence of the alien empire's precision and power. Elegant corridors led to massive halls, and devices he had never seen hummed softly, monitoring everything from energy flow to communications. Yet despite the beauty, he noticed something that spoke to him more than the architecture. The scars of past battles that decorated the palace, marks of previous enemies' attacks. It reminded him that this empire, while advanced, had faced struggle and survival just like his people. As he walked, he met the palace engineers, guards, and scholars. At first, they were wary of the human, unsure if he was a spy, a threat, or something else. But Ryan did not speak of war or glory. He shared simple ideas, small improvements to their technology, small ways to protect the people. One young engineer had struggled with repairing a plasma generator for hours. Ryan watched for a moment and then suggested a tiny adjustment in the energy flow. The device sparked to life, functioning better than before. The engineer's eyes widened, and others began to whisper about the human who seemed to understand technology faster than their own people. The Queen observed from a distance, studying him with curiosity and admiration. She noticed how he never boasted, how he helped without expecting reward, and yet she saw something even more impressive, his instinct to protect. When a small accident occurred in one corridor, a piece of debris fell toward a young guard. Without hesitation, Ryan moved faster than anyone expected and caught the debris before it struck, taking a heavy blow to his shoulder in the process. The guard stared at him in awe, and the Queen's heart skipped a beat as she saw him once again risk himself for others. Days passed, and Ryan's presence became both comforting and strange to the palace. He was a human, yes, and humans were often unpredictable. Yet his bravery, his calm in the face of danger, and his quiet intelligence began to win the respect of the palace staff. Elira felt it in ways she could not explain. She had never met a human like him. He was not only strong but thoughtful, not only brave but kind. Each day she found herself glancing toward him, wondering what thoughts lay behind his steady eyes. The calm did not last. One evening, alarms blared through the palace. The unknown enemy that Ryan had warned about had arrived at the edges of the star system. Their ships glowed with an eerie red light, faster and more numerous than anything the alien empire had faced. Panic erupted among the council, and fear spread like wildfire through the palace. Elira summoned Ryan immediately. He stood before her, wounded but composed. As the Queen's advisors shouted about evacuation, defense strategies, and the impossibility of fighting such a force. The Queen listened silently, then looked at Ryan, seeking guidance. "Can they be stopped?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with urgency. Ryan studied the fleet through the palace's observation window. He had seen their tactics before, observed weaknesses and calculated risks. "Yes," he said finally, "but it will not be easy. We must act quickly, and we must be willing to risk ourselves." The council gasped. "A human alone? Against such numbers?" one of them exclaimed. "I am not alone," Ryan replied. "If we coordinate and if we fight together, we can stop them." His eyes met the Queen's. "We can save your people." Elira felt her heart tighten. His calm certainty, even in the face of overwhelming danger, inspired a strength she had not expected. She nodded, turning to the council. "Prepare our forces," she commanded. "We fight, and we fight with him." The preparations were quick but intense. Ryan moved among the alien soldiers, teaching them small human strategies that relied on unpredictability, speed, and protection. He showed them how to use cover, how to anticipate enemy movements, and how to support one another without panicking. Slowly, the soldiers began to trust him, seeing that his tactics worked. As the battle approached, the Queen met him in the armory. She studied his scars again, noticing the new ones forming from the debris accident. She touched his arm lightly. "You do not have to fight alone," she whispered. Ryan smiled faintly, pain flickering across his features. "I will not fight alone," he said. "But I must be where I am needed most." The battle began as the enemy ships entered orbit. They struck quickly, firing lasers and deploying boarding pods that landed across the palace and city below. Panic spread among the guards at first, but Ryan moved to the front, guiding them calmly, organizing defense points and shielding weaker soldiers. He personally took on one group of enemies that had breached a perimeter, using his strength, speed, and combat training to protect the palace gates. The Queen watched from above, her heart racing. He was human, fragile compared to her warriors, yet he moved with skill, precision, and courage beyond measure. Each scarred arm blocked attacks. Each step forward was a testament to his willpower. She realized in that moment that humans fought not only with weapons, but with heart. When the enemy reached the central tower, Ryan was the first inside. He faced a group of invaders alone, his body already bruised and bleeding. But he did not falter. He fought to protect the engineers, the medics, and the palace guards who were cornered. His movements were calculated, fearless, and fierce. The alien soldiers who followed him could not help but admire his bravery, taking courage from his example. Elira descended into the tower after Ryan had secured the lower levels. She found him facing the last wave of attackers, his uniform torn, chest heaving, and a new cut running across his cheek. Without hesitation, she joined him in the fight, using her own abilities to disarm and disable enemies. Together, human and Queen fought side by side, their movements synchronized in a way that spoke of trust and respect. Finally, the enemy retreated. The palace and city had suffered damage, but the forces were intact and the intruders had been repelled. Ryan slumped against the wall, breathing hard, and Elira rushed to his side. She touched the new cuts and bruises, her hand trembling slightly. "You did not have to risk yourself so much," she said softly, almost unable to believe the courage she had witnessed. Ryan looked at her, eyes tired but steady. "I fight for those who cannot," he said, "for those who need someone to stand for them. That is all a human can do." Elira's heart ached with admiration and something deeper. She had ruled with logic and strategy, avoiding attachment, Yet here was a human who had fought for her people and risked his life without hesitation. She saw honesty, loyalty, and strength in his eyes, the very qualities that made humans extraordinary. She studied the scars that ran across his body, the visible and invisible marks of his past, and she realized something profound. This man did not fight for power, glory, or recognition. He fought because it was the right thing to do. Every scar, every wound, every moment of pain he endured was proof of his commitment to protect life. Elira knelt beside him, placing her hand over one of his older scars. "You fought for someone before," she said gently. "And now, you fought for my people." Ryan's lips curved into a faint smile, pain flickering across his face. "Yes," he whispered. "I fought because someone needed me, and I will continue to fight for those who cannot protect themselves." For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The sounds of the aftermath, the hum of machines, distant shouts and alarms, faded into the background. Only the quiet between the human soldier and the alien queen remained. Finally, Elira spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "And who did you fight for this time?" Ryan took a breath, his chest heaving, but his eyes met hers without fear. "For you," he said simply. The words hung in the air, heavier than any weapon. The queen felt her chest tighten, emotions she had kept buried for years stirring to life. She realized she did not want him to leave, did not want him to fight alone ever again. She wanted to protect him, just as he had protected her people. The human soldier, scarred and weary, finally allowed himself to relax. He had come to this alien world alone, risking everything. And yet here he was, not only surviving but making a difference, earning respect, and touching the heart of a queen. He understood now that his presence mattered, that his choices had weight, and that even across galaxies, humans could inspire, protect, and endure. Elira stayed by his side through the night, refusing to leave, while healers worked quietly around them. She watched him breathe, watched him endure, and realized that she had found not just a soldier, but someone extraordinary, a human whose courage, loyalty, and heart transcended borders, species, and expectation. By morning, the palace and city were still recovering, but hope had been restored. Ryan had proven that humans could stand against overwhelming odds, and that their strength came not only from their weapons or skill, but from the will to protect others. And in the quiet moments, Elira found herself drawn to him, her respect growing into something she could not yet name. Ryan looked out over the palace grounds, at the stars beyond, at the recovering people below. He felt pain, yes, and exhaustion, but also a quiet satisfaction. He had fought, he had survived, and he had made a difference. And somewhere nearby, the alien queen, once distant and untouchable, now watched him with admiration and curiosity, understanding for the first time that humans were capable of far more than she had ever imagined. The universe outside remained vast and dangerous, but inside the palace, a human and a queen had forged a bond of trust, respect, and a shared commitment to protect life. For Ryan, it was the beginning of a new purpose. For Elira, it was the beginning of understanding a species she had long underestimated. Together, they would face whatever came next. And in that quiet, scarred, and yet hopeful moment, the stars above seemed a little brighter, as if even the cosmos recognized the bravery of one human who dared to fight, not for glory, but for life itself.